Hey, Dwayne.
George.
Hello, dear.
So, Pearl, what have you been up to since we last met?
Well, George, I've been on a journey.
Oh, really? Well, what kind of journey?
A spiritual one. A journey along the road to enlightenment.
Wow. And is that what brought you here?
It is. Though Santa Cova is but one step on that road.
What's so special about Santa Cova?
It's an ancient and very holy place. I've spent the last year researching it, and I can truly say there is nothing I do not know about it.
I don't suppose you'd know anything about that rock out there?
No, only that for 1,000 years, people have claimed to see a face in its shapes.
Still, keeping busy, Dwayne?
Like the man said, George, that old kaleidoscope keeps getting shaken, and the pieces are ever in flux.
Guess it's your job to pick 'em up, huh?
Well, somebody has to do it, compadre.
I enjoyed talking to Dwayne, but I was rarely any the wiser afterwards. What can you tell me about the statue?
I read that the Black Madonna has been here since the 9th century. She's called the Virgin of Montserrat. Some say the original was moved to the cathedral. But Dwayne and I know that's just a bluff, don't we, honey?
We sure do. This one is the real McCoy.
What can you tell me about Santa Cova?
Well, dear, they call it the Chapel of the Holy Grotto. It was built directly into the mountain itself in 1696. It survived the Napoleonic Wars, mudslides, Civil War. But the chapel is still standing today. It's a miracle.
Or a restoration.
What was that, dear?
Yes, a miracle. I didn't think he'd... Hey, have a look at this.
Don't you bring that thing anywhere near me, honey.
His name is Trevor.
You gave that a name?
He's a...
So is Dwayne, but I don't keep him in a box, George.
Well, there was that one time, honey.
Not now, Dwayne.
Good thing we had the radio.
In my line of work, I'm always prepared.
For what?
Well, thieves. I gotta protect my lunchbox somehow, George.
Dwayne, does this mean anything to you?
I don't know. Pearl?
Oh, nothing, dear. Apart from the obvious Gnostic connotations, of course.
What?
You know, the Dominicans. All those Gnostic saints. Doubting Thomas, Judas. And you see the woman in the red cloak? The infamous Mary Magdalene herself.
A lady in red.
That's enough now, Dwayne. You know my feelings about her.
Pearl knew her Gnostic onions, all right.
Then there's the Ouroboros, of course.
Something special about it?
Well, if I remember rightly, there was an Ouroboros right here in this chapel. Back in the 30s and 40s, the chapel was renovated. The workmen uncovered numerous symbols carved in the rock. Amongst them was a fine Ouroboros.
But that's amazing. So, where is it?
Oh, it's not there now.
Oh.
It was considered blasphemous, so they plastered over it. Sweetheart, I think it's time for us to go. The road to enlightenment waits for no woman.
'Tis the pilgrim's lot, George.
It was so nice to see you again. And meet your girlfriend.
We're not.
Take this radio, Nico. Never know when you might need it. Keep an eye on our boy George here.
Poor little lost lamb.
I'm not...
Don't worry, this little lamb's in safe hands. Bon voyage.
Bye-bye, dears.
See ya! Nico, don't even start.
Little lamb?
Let's focus on the task in hand, shall we? Okay, this Ouroboros that Pearl mentioned,
You're right. We need to find it.
we couldn't leave now, not when we were so close to finding the tabula. That wouldn't have worked. The Black Madonna was clearly the focal point of the chapel. The candlelight was dancing on the Black Madonna. Now that was one heavenly sight. The candlelight was dancing on the Black Madonna. Now that was one heavenly sight. It was a crank candle. It was a crank candle. It was a crank candle. I couldn't see anything unusual about it. Nico? How do you like my lights, Nico?
They look heavenly, George.
How come your Ave Maria sounds so much...
Catholic.
What do you think of the incense?
Smells familiar.
Just like church?
Not quite, but it'll do. Let's find the Ouroboros that Pearl mentioned.
I found a statue over there. A Black Madonna.
Great! What did you find out about it? Well,
Anything new on the chapel?
not yet.
I already had a candle. It was an ordinary candle in a colored glass. Not a snow. No, that didn't. Never. They didn't go. Well, it seemed. No, that didn't. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Never in a month of... The view over the... I needed a better... The Black Madonna was clearly the focal point of the chapel. I placed a candle in the recess above which Puritas had been carved. I thought I'd heard a faint click. I only had one match left. I had to make it count. That wouldn't work. The Black Madonna was clearly the focal point of the chapel. Hey, Nico. How do you like my lights, Nico?
They look... Let's find the Ouroboros that...
It was a crank candle. Hey, Nico. I found a statue over there.
Great.
How do you like my lights?
They...
The candlelight was dancing on the Black Madonna. Now that was one heavenly sight. The candlelight was dancing. It was a crank candle. A modern plaster altar had been built against the rock. I hoped this was the right thing to do. Hey, Nico, I found the Ouroboros.
Good job, Georges.
Pearl was right. The plaster had covered an Ouroboros. I knew it. Another secret passageway.
Amazing, Georges. How did you do it?
Just another case of the old Stobart magic, I guess, Nico. It looks a little dark in there.
Are you scared, Georges?
Of course not. Just worried about you tripping, that's all. Whoa, this is one dark cave.
It's the door that worries me, Georges.
Well, I'm sure the door will open again if we give it a minute. No need to panic. Now we panic. Help! I gotta say, Nico, you're pretty calm about this.
Traveling with you, Georges, I've got used to this kind of thing. If I panicked every time a door shut behind us, probably forever, well...
You're right. What was I thinking? You see if you can get the door open, and I'll go check out the dark, evil-smelling cave. Fumbling around in the dark wasn't going to be fun. But heck, I'd spent a lifetime doing it, so what was new? The wall felt like it had something carved into it. For a moment, I imagined falling forever in the dark. But it was just my imagination running wild. The floor was solid. It was a flat surface like stone. It felt cold and smooth, with some indentations along. It was the only illumination I had. I needed to save it as a last resort. I didn't want to use my last match until I absolutely needed to. I needed to save the match. I only had one shot. The match might have helped, but it was the only one I had. I didn't want to use my... I needed to save the match. I only had one shot. It was stone with a recess in it and, an oily liquid in it. There was some kind of thin twine in the middle of it, too. Hey, Nico, I think I found some light. Whoa!
It must be Genan. Ramon said he disappeared while searching the mountains for the tabula.
So this is where he ended up, dead in a cave. And on closer inspection, I'd even say blown your own brains out dead.
Okay, George, I get the point. What is this place?
Who knows? But look at the Gnostic symbols.
You're right. The colors, the trees. But who is she?
It looks like the Virgin Mary, but I don't think it is.
What do you mean?
The red robes and that whole off-the-shoulder look? It must be Mary Magdalene, of course. Marquez told me that the Gnostics revered her. This place, it's some kind of Gnostic shrine.
There's got to be something to release that door. Maybe amongst these carvings.
But if it was that obvious, don't you think Genan would have found it? Genan had certainly been busy before he blew his brains out. I wonder what he'd been up to. Nico!
What?
Is this what I think it is? It must be the Tabula Veritatis.
So Genan did find it.
It's so small, so innocent looking. Why would Simeon call it evil? Why so many deaths for this?
And why go to such lengths to keep it hidden?
Unless it is as genuinely dangerous as Simeon claimed.
The question now is, what do we do with it?
The photograph was of an ancient clay tablet. Genan had written on it. Someone, presumably Genan, had taken the time to translate the inscription. At a glance, the inscription seemed to relate to the exploits of someone called the Sun King. The symbol on the tablets looked similar to the ones etched into the face of the Tabula Veritatis. It was an old flashlight. It looked like it died around the same time as Genan. It was an old water canteen. The contents had long since been drunk. Oil in the bowl of the lamp fed a wick, illuminating the room with a warm glow. I picked up the old gun. It was too corroded and rusty to ever be fired again. It was a fedora, just like the one in Ganon's trunk back at the Castell. The years hadn't been kind to it. It had to be Genan, in which case the body had been there for decades. There was a bullet hole in the side of his head. Just like us, he'd been trapped. He'd chosen suicide. The long-dead remains of a person slumped over the table with a bullet hole in his skull. Ex luce veritas. Out of light, truth. I'd seen the same words on the fresco at Castel des Saints. The circle of iron was set into an ornate frame that covered the oil lamp. Oil in the bowl of the lamp fed a wick, illuminating the room with a warm glow. Getting up close and personal to Ganon's leathery corpse wasn't pleasant, but we had to figure out how to get out of there. The long-dead remains of a person. I prized the map out from under the arm of the corpse. It looked like Ganon had scrawled some kind of last testament onto this map. My friends, I know that you will eventually find me, but by then it will be too late. I have decoded the tabula, and I know our destiny lies in paradise. The key to the power of God is in our hands. I die secure in the knowledge that you will now be able to complete my work. Tell my family that I died doing my duty, that I surrender my life gladly to the cause. In the light of the day, these words will fade, like our souls. But rest assured that when they do, their echoes will guide us to where we will meet once again. I'm not sure, but it looks like crafty old Ganon left a secret message in his testament. It was a fedora, just like the one in Ganon's trunk. A group of figures looked up towards the tabula. They were all colored red. I'd seen something like it before. A large carving of the tabula veritatis symbol. All the other figures in the scene seemed to be supplicating themselves to it. It was an old rusty pistol. I guessed that finding the tabula was the easy part. Figuring out its purpose was a different proposition. That wouldn't have worked. According to the translation, some guy called the Sun King once had the tabula veritatis in his possession. The symbol on the tablets looked similar to the ones etched into the face of the tabula veritatis. The pillar had been carved into the shape of a tree and painted green. I knew it represented the tree of life. The pillar had been sculpted into a tree and then painted blue. I knew it was supposed to be the tree of knowledge. There were ancient scratches on the plinth, as if someone had moved the statue. I'm sure that this is Mary Magdalene.
The red robes. It all makes sense. The Madonna would be wearing blue. So, who's the child?
Well, according to the Gnostic Gospels, when Mary kissed the lips of Jesus, she,
Oh, I see.
Yep,
So the Gnostics think that the suckling child is...
I guess so. They were all colored red. The ornate lamp warranted a closer look. Ex luce veritas. Out of light, truth. The circle of iron was set. Hey. What are you looking for?
I'm not sure yet, but there has to be some way of opening the door.
Laughing boy over there may beg to differ.
But Georges, he didn't have a woman's eye for detail.
They didn't... Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I wondered if Ganon's notes on the photograph might help me decode the tabula. If the translation is right, the symbol La-On represents the Sun King. If the rest of the translation is anything to go by, sounds like he was quite the badass in his time. If the translation is right, the symbol La-On represents the Sun King. If the rest of the translation is anything to go by, sounds like he was quite the badass in his time. The stone door had sealed us in. No way would we have been able to prise it open. If Ganon's translation is correct, the symbol La-Ha-Shi represents the Sun City region. Ganon had marked this symbol in red with the letter A. If Ganon's translation, Ganon had marked this symbol in red with the letter A. If Ganon's translation, Ganon had marked this symbol in red. It was a location, but I needed to know where it was. Shi translates as Mountain Kingdom. Ganon had marked this symbol with the letter B. Du-A-Shi apparently means the two-river region. I guessed that finding the tabula was the easy part. Figuring out its purpose was a different proposition. A row of symbols were etched onto the top bar of the tabula. These symbols looked just like the ones on the photograph of the clay tablet. The tabula was engraved with a number of curious-looking symbols. These symbols looked just like the ones on the photograph of the clay tablet.